Hello, I'm Cole Powell, award-winning singer-songwriter from Random Mind Records. If you enjoy what you hear, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, click the bell for notifications. Consider supporting us on Patreon for exclusive perks, including polls and long-form reactions. Also, be sure to check out our brand new arts and media podcast, Words Like That, hosted by me, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, now I'll shut up and get to it.
Can't handle words like that. Words like that. No, no, no.
And I want to give a breakdown here of the coming attractions we saw in front of Dune. I had not seen any of these trailers before, even though I've done a number of trailer reactions on the channel this year for big movies coming out. All of these were fresh, so now I can't react to them on the channel, but I can give you a quick review, quick overview. First up, I'm going to talk about a couple that I'm not even going to play any clips for because I'm really just not interested in them at all. The first Omen, which I'm deducing is a prequel to the Omen. I don't know if it's going to be a prequel to the original Omen series or the new Omen, whatever. Not my cup of tea. Not a horror guy. I do not do demonic. It creeps me out. Was not interested in this at all. I say I'm not a big horror guy. I'm a classic horror guy, and I said that to somebody one time. They're like, "Oh, so me too? You know, like The Exorcist and stuff." I'm like, "No. I'm talking about like Bela Lugosi Dracula. That's my horror era. And once we get past the '60s, I'm out." So that didn't interest me. I have a hard time gauging what horror movies are going to play well, so I can't even really make a prediction whether that's going to go over well or not. Another one that was just not obviously geared toward my demographic was it's a romantic drama film called Someone Like You, based on a novel. It looked very Nicholas Sparks-ish. It looked like, I can't even remember which one of these are Nicholas Sparks novels, but they're in that same vein if they're not. But like The Vow, Dear John, stuff from the 2000s, early 2010s that were geared specifically toward a young female audience. That's what this movie looked like. And the premise apparently is a young man's girlfriend, fiance something, passes away, and it turns out she's got a secret twin sister out there somewhere, and then he goes to try to find the sister. Not my cup of tea. Probably would play decent-ish among the target demographic. I don't think it's going to be a blockbuster. But, again, not my cup of tea. We'll see. Kung Fu Panda 4. I really like the Kung Fu Panda franchise. Jack Black is hilarious as the voice of Po. This one looked humorous. It looked like it's going to have a lot of heart. Something I would take the kids to. Although that's not, I'm not really a huge children's animated watcher. I would take the kids to this unless the reviews aren't like terrible. So that one looked pretty good. Ghostbusters Frozen Kingdom. I have a confession to make. I have never sat down and watched the original Ghostbusters. There are only a handful of big movies throughout movie history that I haven't seen. Most of them are from the 80s because I've never been a huge fan of that decade in any form as far as pop culture, entertainment. And I've only seen bits and pieces of the original Ghostbusters here and there. I've never seen any of the sequels. The last movie that came out with Paul Rudd did fairly well at the box office, and it actually looked like something that, hey, if I had seen the original and I was a fan of the franchise, I would probably like this. This one kind of has the same feel. I felt like if I understood the lore and the mythology and the fan service, I would have been sitting there going, ha ha ha, yeah, they got this character, they got that character. At the same time, there was something that seemed a little forced, like they were maybe trying too hard to be big. But again, I don't know. Not being a fan of the franchise, it's hard for me to gauge. I did notice that this trailer was the second trailer. That's what I saw before Dune. Only has 600 and something thousand views on YouTube, whereas trailer number 1 has 24 million, which I realize trailer number 2 hasn't been out as long, but still, if you follow view patterns of trailers in YouTube videos, that much of a drop between first and second trailer now that we're getting close to the movie's actual release, that doesn't always bode well for the box office of a film. So I guess we'll see on that. Godzilla times Kong. I am actually a huge fan of the original Toho Godzilla kaiju films, even though I was completely aware at the time when I was a kid watching these that it was just a bunch of guys in giant monster costumes. I loved them. I couldn't get enough of them from the Godzilla and related films in the 50s, 60s, 70s. The new American Legendary Pictures Warner Brothers franchise with Godzilla and King Kong. The first Godzilla I thought was really good with Bryan Cranston. Kong Skull Island was passable. Wasn't terrible. Wasn't great. It had a good cast. All these have had good casts. Godzilla King of the Monsters, I liked, but if I wasn't such a big fan of the kaiju giant monsters fighting each other, there wouldn't have been much else there. That was the appeal and draw for that movie. Everything else about it was kind of middle of the road. Godzilla vs. Kong, I started and I got like 20 minutes in and have not returned to it. I intended to, but just haven't done it because it just didn't really hook me like I need to be hooked to finish a movie all the way, because I only have a limited amount of time these days. This one, it looked like too much. It looks like they're trying too hard to me. I could be totally wrong. And I'll probably end up watching it just because I am such a fan. I'll go back and finish Godzilla vs. Kong, then I'll watch this one. But if this ends up flopping, I won't be surprised. Now, a film called Civil War. Now, this one was interesting. It's directed by Alex Garland. He did, I think, 28 Days Later, which I've never seen. He did Ex Machina, which I did see and thought was really well done. I had some quibbles with it, but overall I thought it was a great film. Then he did a film called Annihilation, and I had such high hopes for that movie. It was with Natalie Portman. I actually had the opportunity to go see one movie whenever this was out, and Annihilation and Black Panther were both out. And I was like, well, I've seen every Marvel movie in theaters, and I'm probably not going to get a chance to go see Black Panther again if I don't go now. But Annihilation looks really good, and it's directed by the guy that directed Ex Machina. So let me go see Annihilation. It was one of, for me, and I realize I disagree with the critics on this completely, it was one of the worst films I've seen in theaters. It was just a giant dud. It was one of those, I feel like, that Alex Garland thought he was doing his 2001 Space Odyssey at the end there, and the whole thing was just weird and unpleasant for me. And then whenever I actually finally got to see Black Panther when it came out on home video, I was like, man, I wish I'd seen that in theaters. It was a better film in my opinion. But anyway, this one, the concept, as the dialogue lays out in the trailer, America's in another period of civil war. You've got a president who, based on just the look and the dialogue, appears to be maybe on the politically right side of the spectrum. And you've got Texas and California have broken off and teamed up to fight the U.S. And then you have Florida, the Florida Alliance, they call it. So I guess it's Florida and some additional states have got together. They've broken off from the U.S. And right off the bat, none of that makes sense. Like, how did we get there from the real world America that we know now? Because if you've got a government that's more on the right side of the political spectrum, and California, as it stands, more on the left side, but Texas is also more on the right side, but now they've gotten with California, and Florida's also more on the right side, but they've also broken away from what appears to be a right-sided government. It just doesn't seem to make sense politically, like realistic, if this is supposed to be based on the continuation of the politics that are going on in real life, leading to civil war. Plus, the fact that America is so politically divided right now, I don't know if people are going to want to go see something like that. A lot of times movies are escape, and instead of this being an escape, it's more like a look at what could actually happen if we continue on the path that we're on. Although in the story, it doesn't even seem realistic that that's where we could end up as far as the divisions of America. So I don't know. I'm predicting this was going to be a flop. Did not interest me. And I like dystopian type stories and what ifs, but it just didn't seem like it was coming from a realistic starting point to be a realistic dystopian story for me. Finally, Kevin Costner, Horizon, an American Saga. I love Kevin Costner. I even like his movies that are critically panned, that were giant flops. I can actually watch Waterworld. Yes, I know it's terrible. I can watch it. I like The Postman, actually, that he also directed. That was also a dystopian post-American landscape, but it felt realistic. It felt like we could have gotten to that point from where we were in the 90s when he shot the thing. Of course, his big Western, Dances with Wolves, award-winning epic. This is a new Western. It's got a Lonesome Dove feel to it. I love Westerns. They're my second favorite genre behind speculative fiction. I thought the trailer just looked great. And what's interesting here, it's actually so long, it's being split and released in two parts, 2 months apart. One in June, one in August. And that's a gutsy move, because if part one, even if part one does well in its first 2 weeks, if it stinks, part two is dead. And if you already have a commitment to release it, yeah, that's gonna not bode well for whatever. I'm not even sure what every studio's release this, but it's not gonna bode well for the filmmakers. So it's a gutsy move. I think they must think they have a hit on their hands. They wouldn't be doing it like this. It wouldn't be splitting it in two and putting it 2 months apart. I don't think. But I like the look of it, unless the reviews on this are just terrible, because I don't always agree with critics, particularly not recently these days. But unless the reviews on this are just like terrible, I'm probably going to go see part one. And then if it stinks, I won't go see part two, which is going to be the case for everybody else. So we'll see. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Consider supporting us on Patreon, and we'll see you soon.